Welcome to English, Please, the podcast where we explore interesting topics in under 10 minutes in clear, intermediate English. I'm your host, Christopher. I live in New York City, and I've always been passionate about languages and how we learn them. Whether you're listening on your way to work or while cooking dinner at home, this show is designed to help you with your English listening and comprehension skills. First of all, thanks for listening. When people in Europe think about American holidays, they often imagine Thanksgiving, Independence Day with fireworks, or Halloween with costumes. But there are other holidays in the United States that are less well known abroad, but still very important. One of these is Columbus Day, celebrated each October. This holiday remembers the arrival of Christopher Columbus to the Americas in 1492. For a long time, it was seen as a celebration of exploration and of European roots in the New World. In recent years, however, it has become one of the most debated holidays in the United States. Many people in the U.S. now see this holiday very differently. In fact, many states and cities have stopped celebrating Columbus Day and instead celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, which honors the native peoples who lived in the Americas long before Columbus arrived. For people outside the U.S., this might be surprising. Columbus himself was from Italy and worked for Spain. Why, then, is the United States so deeply connected to him? And why has this holiday become so controversial? Christopher Columbus was an Italian sailor from Genoa, Italy. In 1492, he crossed the Atlantic Ocean with the support of Spain. Instead of reaching Asia, as he had hoped, he landed in the Caribbean islands. His voyages opened the door to European exploration, settlement, and colonization of the Americas. Even though Columbus never reached the land that is today the United States, his journey became a powerful symbol. For many Europeans in the centuries that followed, Columbus represented courage, discovery, and progress. For Americans in later generations, he came to symbolize the start of their history. The first big celebration of Columbus in the United States happened in 1792, on the 300th anniversary of his first voyage. But the holiday became much more important in the 19th century, especially for Italian immigrants. At that time, Italians were moving to the U.S. in large numbers, and many faced discrimination. Columbus, as a famous Italian Catholic, became a symbol of pride for them. Celebrating him was a way to say, "We belong here too." By the 20th century, parades and community events had become common. In 1937, President Franklin Roosevelt made Columbus Day a national holiday. It was celebrated on October 12th until 1971, when the government moved it to the second Monday of each October in order to create a long weekend. In cities with many Italian Americans, like New York, Boston, and Chicago, Columbus Day became a day for parades. Marching bands, decorated floats, and community groups filled the streets. Italian flags waved next to American ones, and the holiday felt like a mix of cultural pride and national celebration. For schools, Columbus Day was often a time to tell stories about Christopher Columbus. Many children learned simplified versions of his journey, sometimes with myths. For example, that he proved the earth was round. For many decades, the holiday was positive and without controversy. But that changed in the late 20th century. As historians studied Columbus more closely, a darker picture appeared. Columbus's expeditions were not only about discovery, but also about violence, slavery, and exploitation. When he arrived in the Caribbean, he forced the indigenous people there into hard labor and punished them brutally if they refused. By the 1990s, protests against Columbus Day had become common. People asked, why celebrate a man whose actions caused so much suffering? In 1992, the city of Berkeley, California, became the first city in the U.S. to replace Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. Instead of honoring Columbus, they wanted the day to celebrate Native peoples, their cultures, and their survival. At first, this idea spread slowly. But in the 2000s, more states and cities joined in. Today, more than half of U.S. states recognize Indigenous Peoples Day in some way. In 2021, President Biden became the first U.S. president to officially declare Indigenous Peoples Day at the national level, even as Columbus Day is still legally a federal holiday. This change is about more than names. It shows a shift in how Americans think about their history and whose voices should be heard. For Native communities, the recognition brings dignity and a chance to tell their side of the story. Of course, not everyone agrees with changing Columbus Day. Italian-American organizations often continued to defend it. For them, Columbus is not only about the past, but also about the struggles of immigrants who found acceptance in America. Removing the holiday can feel like erasing their story. On the other hand, critics argue that celebrating Columbus glorifies colonialism. They say it is better to choose another day to celebrate Italian-American heritage, and to use October to honor indigenous peoples instead. Some suggest a compromise, keeping Columbus Day, but teaching a more complete history, or celebrating both Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day together. The way the holiday is marked today depends on where in the U.S. you are. In New York and Chicago, Columbus Day parades are still large events, especially in Italian neighborhoods. In places like Seattle, Minneapolis, or many cities in California, the day is now called Indigenous Peoples Day. Celebrations there include cultural performances, storytelling, and ceremonies. For many people, especially outside big cities, the holiday is simply a day off, though not all employers give it to their employees as a paid holiday. Columbus is remembered in other parts of the world as well. In Spain, October 12th is the National Day of Spain. In Latin America, the same day has a few different names, but all of these versions generally celebrate the mixing of European and indigenous cultures. In Italy, Columbus is sometimes remembered as one of the country's great explorers. This international context helps explain why the U.S. holiday is not just about the U.S., but about wider connections between Europe and the Americas. Whether people here in the U.S. spend the second Monday in October at a parade, at a cultural festival, or simply enjoying a day off, the holiday is a reminder of the complex meeting of Europe and the Americas. It's also a reminder that each generation decides how to remember history. Again, I'm Christopher, and I want to invite you to join me in future episodes of English Please to hear about a variety of topics, all focused on helping you with your English. Thanks, as always, for listening. See you soon!